Dave Campbell's Texas football out here for day 2 of SEC Media Days. I'm Carter Yates. That is senior college writer Mike Craven. We had Georgia, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Missouri today. We're going to go in linear order, starting off with Georgia and Kirby Smart, who I think had the bar of the day, which was in the SEC, humility is a week away. Of these 3 Nick Saban assistants, Ole Miss's Lane Kiffin, Texas Steve Sarkisian, Georgia's Kirby Smart. Let's rank those assistants.
As coaches, I'm going to go.
As coaches,
I'm going to go Kirby Smart, Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin. That's going to be my order.
And then personally, who you like at Media Days?
I think I'll go Lane Kiffin usually, for obvious reasons with his father passing. You know, he wasn't on his normal game. I think Lane Kiffin usually is a great press conference quote. You know, Sark is a little underrated, but I think I would give Kirby Smart number 2. I think he's gotten to a comfortable position where he's starting to talk a little bit more. He's kind of the old head. He's kind of the figurehead of the SEC coaching fraternity now. With Saban gone, it's kind of Kirby Smart's conference to oversee a little bit, and you could tell he's kind of taken on that role with the way he was talking today.
And I think in the magazine we had Georgia ranked number 1, Texas number 2. Is Georgia the clear-cut favorite to you in the SEC? And if so, what makes them that?
Yeah, I don't think clear-cut favorite, but I'm going to go with favorite. I think Carson Beck is a really good quarterback, obviously, but it's the depth in the trenches. Texas is good along the offensive line. Texas is good along the defensive line. The 2 deep at Georgia, though, is just different. The guys that they can rotate in are on a different level. I will never forget being at the national championship game against TCU, having been against Michigan the week before and walked around the field, and they seemed kind of even. 45 minutes before that game, I remember texting people I know, like, put all your money on Georgia, right? Because they just look different. Like, their bodies are just different. Texas is going to have to prove that they can handle that in a way that Georgia's already proven that they can.
And you talked about Carson Beck, a really good quarterback. Speaking of really good quarterbacks, Josh Heupel, the Tennessee head coach. What'd you make of Heupel's performance today at the Media Days and Tennessee as a whole?
Yeah, I thought it was good. It was funny how many Oklahoma questions he got.
So many.
He kind of said later he had one as the over-under, and he definitely missed that one. It's got to be interesting to be a former player, especially with the relationship he has with Oklahoma. Not always the greatest there. He's got passed over for a job, obviously, and stuff. And so to go back to where you're from, to go back and where you play, and to coach against them has got to be interesting. But I always love listening to him talk. He's a really smart football guy.
And I think everyone's talking about Nico Imaliva, the Tennessee quarterback.
That was good.
Was that correct?
That was pretty good.
Okay, I was just hoping. I hope it was. You say it with confidence, no one will call you out for it. I don't think enough people are talking about the Tulane transfer, Chris Brazzell, who's a Texas high school football alum.
Yeah.
What do you think he brings to that offense?
Yeah, he's going to team up with Brew McCoy, give them some options. It felt like Tennessee last year, even with Joe Milton in the quarterback situation, the biggest drop-off was wide receiver. They just didn't have the guys that they had that previous year where they had all those numbers after they went to the NFL. Chris was great at Tulane. I know Fritz and that Houston staff wanted him to follow him to Houston. I think he's going to be a big-time wide receiver, and as long as Nico can throw the ball around and as good as advertised, I think Tennessee's offense is going to be back towards 2022.
And a lot of debate out here at Media Days on who the real UT was, Texas or Tennessee. Tennessee had one thing to say. I'm sure Texas will have another thing to say tomorrow. Texas's biggest rival, though, Oklahoma. What did you think of Brent Venables in his performance today at Media Days? Obviously, I don't think they're getting enough buzz right now. They were 10-3 last year, but everyone's acting like they're an afterthought in this SEC.
I always like how Venables, this is just a media person take, he answers your questions in detail. He goes into it. You can tell he likes talking about football. He does the Kirby Smart thing where he takes up a lot of the time before you even get to questions.
Running out the clock.
Yeah, which I think is a pro move because you get to control the message a little bit. If I was Oklahoma, I would, especially, I know the fans want more attention. If I was the coach, if I was the players, I'd like where they are. They're really talented. They beat a team last year that was in the college football playoff. They have an offensive line. They have a defensive line. I'd like to be in that tier 2, not getting talked about as much. If you win 10 games, you're in the college football playoff, right? You don't have to be perfect anymore. They're going to get to go under the radar. The problem for Oklahoma, that schedule's tough. They did not get the Texas draw into the SEC. That schedule's going to be tough. It'll be fascinating to see how they handle the grind.
And first-year starting quarterback Jackson Arnold will be taking on that tough schedule first year in the SEC. What are your expectations, you would think, or what are you excited to see about with Jackson Arnold?
Yeah, we saw it in high school, right? He kind of got in a little bit over his head early on in his first couple of starts. I think we saw that against Arizona in the Alamo Bowl. But then he ended up being one of the best high school football prospects a lot of us have seen in a while. Right? He was a really, really good football player. There's a reason he was recruited the way that he was. Mr. Texas football, all that kind of stuff. I think he's going to be good. It's to me, the question about Oklahoma is what's around him. Okay. Last year, they didn't have the talent that Texas had at the skill positions. Drake Stoops was their best receiver for a lot of the year. If they're better at those spots through the portal and through recruiting, I think Jackson's going to put up big numbers.
Speaking of teams that got better through recruiting, is Missouri, the final team for SEC Media Days, had 5-star Luther Burden, former 5-star Theo Weiss from Allen. Look what happens when you get a couple of 5-stars. Breakout year last year. Do you see Missouri keeping the same track or maybe kind of falling off a little bit?
If they fall off, I think it's just because it's more crowded. You know, like they could have the same team and finish 2 spots lower in the SEC standings. That's just because there's no divisions anymore, and Texas and Oklahoma came in there. I think Drinkwitz is a really good coach. He's a fun quote, right? He showed us that again today. I think Missouri's a little bit above their skis. Like I don't think that they're an SEC contender. I think if they break into that second tier and win 9 games, win 10 games, and try to sneak into the playoff, I think that's their ceiling. But I could be wrong. They were better last year than I thought they were going to be.
What do you think the impact is of divisionless football in the SEC? No more East-West, no 8-8 split. Yeah. It's a free-for-all.
Yeah, I think if you're a team from the East, you hate it. You're for a team in the West, you probably like it. You know, some of them got hard draws, even though there's no divisions anymore. I think the Big Ten probably matters more. Like when they lost their divisions just because of how uneven those were. But with Georgia on the East, you know, they were all going to be the favorite. They're going to be the favorite again today. But I do think it creates, especially with the amount of teams as well, it just creates an imbalance in the schedule. Like Texas's schedule is not Oklahoma's schedule. A&M gets all their four toughest games at home, right? So I do think that there's going to be some gripes at the end of the year of some teams that won 8 or 9 games that probably win 10 or 11 with another team schedule.
Craven, we're halfway through day 2 in the books at SEC Media Days. Texas coming tomorrow, Texas A&M on Thursday. For senior writer Mike Craven, I'm Carter Yates signing off here for Dave Campbell's Texas Football.